Welcome back. I'm joined by Andrew Perez as we unpack the recent 2025 Liberal leadership contest. And now we have a new Prime Minister Mark Carney. Where does he take Canada from here? Thank you again, Andrew, for joining me. So for many folks at home, apart from this sudden snap leadership contest, most people didn't know who Mark Carney was. I love politics, so I was familiar that he was the former governor of the Bank of Canada. Then a few years later, he was the governor of the Bank of the UK. But where did he come from? Where did he get his start?
Well, in short, Tanya, Mark Carney is a Canadian success story. He was born in the Northwest Territories to a middle-class family. His parents were both public school teachers. And when he was quite young, 4 or 5, the family moved to Edmonton. And that's where Mr. Carney grew up with 4 other siblings, raised in a middle-class Catholic family, attended Catholic public schools, played hockey, earned a scholarship to Harvard University, where he also played hockey and studied economics, and went on to earn master's and PhD degrees at Oxford in the UK, where he incidentally met his now wife. And so at the end of the day, this is someone that did not come from means. This is someone that came from an ordinary background from rural Canada, moving to Edmonton, growing up there, and worked extremely hard to build. I would say he's probably the most successful public figure that I can think of in Canada to lead 2 G7 central banks. I don't think the UK had ever hired a foreigner to lead its central bank prior to Mr. Carney. And so I think Mr. Carney's story is one that we should celebrate as Canadians.
Now, I appreciate you giving the context, as I was reading up prior to the leadership vote. I really want to understand who each of these characters were. And because Mr. Carney's now Prime Minister Carney's more of a recent development, I was surprised to see some of his interesting accomplishments. But the Conservatives will paint him, or have painted him, as sort of an out-of-touch elite. Because, yes, while he did come from, a middle-class Canadian family, that in the last, say, 20, 30 years, from banking and being a banker or governor of the banks, it's put him in a different stratosphere, if you will. Is that true? Will he resonate with the electorate?
I think, Tanya, that those criticisms are going to ring hollow, especially in the moment that we're in. I think the party label and traditional partisan politics isn't going to play a huge role in an election that's now imminent. I think Canadians are going to be zeroing in on leadership. Who has the CV? Who has the skill set, the temperament, the education to not negotiate with Trump, because nobody can negotiate with Trump, but to stand strong and to stand up to the bully that is Donald Trump, someone who understands economics, business intuitively, and that is Mark Carney. And so, yes, he's an extremely accomplished person. He's not an ordinary Canadian, but he comes from an ordinary background, and I don't think those criticisms are going to be very compelling at the end of the day. Who else would you want in charge during this hinge moment? I would like to have somebody with the CV and the gravitas of Mark Carney, someone that is actually very respectful and businesslike. If you look at his swearing-in ceremony, and I think the style matters as much as the substance, the swearing-in ceremonies of prime ministers there's a lot of pageantry, typically, pomp and circumstance. The prime minister arrives with their spouse and children. That didn't happen on Friday. Mr. Carney arrived at Rideau Hall by himself. And, Mr. Trudeau would always hug his cabinet ministers, and that didn't happen. It was very businesslike. It was a back to basics approach. And I think that's what you're going to see both in style and with Mr. Carney's leadership. And I think that threatens the Conservatives.
Now, so is that what it seemed to be what dominated the Liberal leadership. And is that what really this soon pending federal election is? Is it really a litmus on who can stand up to Trump and his tariffs?
I think it is, for better or for worse. A couple months ago, we were headed toward a spring election that was going to be about the consumer carbon tax and Mr. Trudeau's tired leadership. That ballot question had the Conservatives 20 to 25 points ahead. Those two factors have been removed from the equation. We're into a whole new world. I do hope, as someone that is a policy wonk and loves public policy, I do hope that, yes, the frame in the election will be the existential threat to our sovereignty and economic prosperity posed by Trump. But I hope that that frame will also unleash a genuine debate around looking at our economy. And I think this is why I'm so attracted to Carney. We need to talk about economic growth and interprovincial trade barriers and diversifying trade.
I'm going to pause you there. We're going to get into those topics in just a few moments.